welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington, D.C. Because of our special holiday schedule, I'm talking to you from Washington here on the late afternoon of Tuesday, December 23rd. That is, it's Christmas Eve. And we have some good news. Another step towards a Greek general election, a chance for the Greeks to vote no to the hated austerity. Down with austerity. Stop austerity. That's going to be the call coming out of the cradle of Western civilization there in Athens and in Greece. More widely, it has proven impossible for the reactionary coalition, the puppets of the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the European Commission, impossible for them to impose their puppet candidate as president of Greece. So the new democracy and all these puppets of the Troika, right? European Central Bank, European Commission, and International Monetary Fund, they are at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. And it's looking more and more likely that it will be impossible now. The third vote, I believe the number of parliamentary supporters goes down from 180 to 160 to elect a puppet in this case. But it's not likely that they'll get the 160. And that will mean early elections. Vote. Let the people decide. And they will decide, stop austerity, roll back austerity, make the bankers pay, and that we'll talk about this in just a minute about what the potentials are. But that's a Christmas present for anybody. And of course, by the time you hear this, it's not even Boxing Day. It's the Feast of Stephen or the Holy Innocents or whatever it is. But you'll be getting the idea. Secondly, the course, the promised philosophical seminar, economic seminar, the political economy of the American system, looks more and more likely for the 23rd, 24th, 25th. And I'm embarrassed to say we still don't have the venue. So I'm hoping to get that venue locked in, lined up, signed, sealed, and delivered very soon. You just have to bear with us a little bit. We were very concerned about Reverend Pinckney. So if we have an excuse, it's that. I don't want to seem to be dithering with these things, but we were heavily engaged on the Pinckney front and actually remain so. So that's going to be coming up. Watch Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed. Watch tarpley.net. And, of course, tune in to this broadcast next time around. I'll be very embarrassed if I don't have a venue for you. Now, the highly interesting developments here as the old year comes to an end. Let's look at some of these. First of all, the economic crisis in Eastern Europe. And that, of course, includes Russia, which is now under heavy attack from the International Monetary Fund and its stooges, London and New York, calling the shots on that one. These are not markets. These are economic attacks. This is economic warfare, not the workings of some mythical neoliberal market. But now, in the middle of all of this, we've got a shining ray of light. We have Belarus. Gold is where you find it. Gold is where you find it. And this is now Belarus under President Lukashenko. And Lukashenko, for various reasons, is particularly hated by the Anglo-American elites. They would like to give him the Gaddafi treatment, or at least a color revolution, if they could. But Lukashenko is forewarned. He knows what a color revolution looks like. It's been tried a couple of times there. These are people who have seen the chaos of a color revolution in Ukraine right next door. They've seen what it has meant for places like Libya and Syria. I hope there are not too many dupes and useful idiots running around in Belarus, because this government has now established something which is of universal value, and that is economic self-defense. The government of Belarus, under President Lukashenko, in the capital of Minsk, has declared, first of all, if you want to export capital from Belarus, great, you pay 30%. You pay a tax of 30%. Almost 1/3 of your flight capital will go to help the treasury. So if you're a libertarian, if you're a ripoff artist, if you're a leech, a parasite, a tick on the body of Belarus, and you try to get out of town with your ill-gotten gains, great, you're going to take a haircut of 30%. This is how to treat speculators. This is how to treat those who go for economic warfare and call that their liberty. That's no liberty. That's license. That's sociopathic behavior. Belarus has shown the way. Remember, in the previous crisis back in 1998, which is now on everybody's lips, it was Mahathir Mohamad of Malaysia who blazed the trail, showing under those conditions back then that a country that put in capital controls and exchange controls would have an easier time of riding out that crisis than at the present time. So Belarus says 30% tax on capital exports. It also means that it's all reportable. I imagine it means that you have to report it, and if they don't want you to do it, they're going to tell you, no, you can't do it at any price. Forget about the 30%. But it's this is capital controls, exchange controls, and then some. It's exchange control with real teeth. This is exemplary. Go Belarus. And then the other thing they've done is if you're bringing an exchange into the country, if you bring in dollars, euros, or yen, or whatever it is, you can't just hoard that. You can't just sit on that. You've got to exchange 1/2 of that for a Belarus ruble. So you got to change it into Belarus rubles, and that simply means that your export earnings will be a support operation to buy Belarus rubles to prop up the currency, to support the national currency, and to counteract the baleful effects of flight capital. Now remember, things have gotten much worse since 1998. In 1998, we had not had the general deregulation of the derivatives, in particular credit default swaps. That happened in the year 2000 with the Commodity Exchange Modernization Act, signed by Clinton, whose wife now thinks she deserves to be president, based on what? Based on knocking down Glass-Steagall in 99 and liberalizing derivative plague for the world in 2000. Well, as a result of those actions, since 2000, we've had this tremendous growth, this cancerous growth, hypertrophy of derivatives, and the derivatives are being used to attack Russia. But Belarus has put up an effective barrier. This is a small country. It would be wonderful. The NATO people would love to have a color revolution in Belarus, knock off Lukashenko, and bring the NATO potential borders all the way into historic Russia, right? Practically to Smolensk. They'd get Minsk, and they would like to get very close to Smolensk, and let's hope they don't, because we don't want this. This is the road to World War III. Therefore, what Belarus has done is actually a step for peace. Now, on the internal front, if you go back and read Putin's press conference in Russia, in the Kremlin, last week, you'll see that he was asked about a coup d'etat. He was asked, are you ready to fight off a coup d'etat? The answer coming in the next segment here on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Now, I'm going to repeat this later on in the show, but let's give you ways to express support for Reverend Edward Pinkney. He has been in jail now for 8 days since the 15th of December. He was handcuffed in the courtroom, dragged out, not on bail. That's already outrageous. You should be free on bail to organize your appeal. No, take him to the county jail, not even take him further away hellhole of the Michigan criminal justice system, of course, under the despicable Governor Snyder, who serves Wall Street. And Congressman Upton is there, too, and Whirlpool in this company town. So Pinckney needs your support. Send him a Christmas card. Send him greetings. Send him a Christmas card with a message of political support. Here we go. Write it down. I'll give this later in the program, but try to get it now. This is the G. Robert Cotton Correctional Facility. In parenthesis, then we need JCF. Jim Charlie Frank. JCF in parens. So G. period. Robert Cotton Correctional Facility, paren JCF. Warden Randall Haas, the warden of the prison. Randall, Randall, Haas. Randall Haas, Haas. 3500, 3500 North Elm Road, Elm Tree, but Elm Road, Jackson, Michigan, JACKSON, MI, 49201. Jackson, Michigan, 49201. So you've also got to put, I'm sorry, at the top, you've got to put strike this. This is the wrong address. I'm so sorry. It's further down on this thing. You've got to write to Edward Pinckney, Pinkney, Edward Pinckney, his inmate ID number is number 294671, 294671, at the G. Robert Cotton Correctional Facility, G. Robert Cotton Correctional Facility, 3855 Cooper Street, 3855 Cooper Street, Cooper Street, Jackson, Michigan, 49201. Jackson, Michigan, 49201. Send it to the second one. I'm sorry about the first one. This was not so clear on the notes that I've got here in front of me, but it's Reverend Pinckney, number, and there's a paren with a hashtag, a sharp, 294671, close paren, G. Robert Cotton Correctional Facility, 3855 Cooper Street, Jackson, Michigan, 49201. I'll repeat that later on. Send Reverend Pinckney greetings, but of course he's a political guy. Send him something political mixed in with the season's greetings according to your preference. Okay, so Belarus now says if you want to have flight capital, you pay 30%, and it means everything is reportable. So that immediately gives a tremendous advantage to the Belarus government in Minsk. And if you earn any foreign exchange, you got to change half of that into Belarus rubles right away to support the currency. Now, we've got other people here. Kasyanov. Kasyanov is a former prime minister under Putin who has become a renegade, right? And, of course, the renegade party in Moscow is numerous because what are they? They're venal. They want money. So Soros goes in there and he says, how many former government ministers, what does a government minister cost today? And they say $5 million. And he says, I'll take 10 of them. So here's the outcome of that process with Kasyanov. Kasyanov essentially says, Putin, you should quit during 2015. Kasyanov, the former prime minister, wants Putin to resign in 2015 because allegedly his economic policies haven't worked. Well, the thing that's not working, of course, is that there's a Wall Street, City of London economic assault This is just as bad as 1941. This is an attack. This is economic warfare, and you got to defend yourself. And Belarus has shown us at least the beginnings, the ABCs of how to defend yourself. And then let's hear from another one, not just Kasyanov, and you look him up, Kasynov, but Kudrin. And Kudrin, I guess at this point, is the leader of this faction. You know the faction. Former Finance Minister Kudrin, banker German Gref, Gref. Then you've got Silovanov, the finance minister now. You've got Nabiulina, Madame Nabiulina, the head of the central bank. And this Nabiulina especially is a satellite of the Federal Reserve and the IMF. But here's Kudrin, December 22nd. So Kudrin blames everything on Putin. Imagine that. Kudrin has to admit that there are numerous factors. But here's Kudrin. Today, I can say we have entered or are entering a real full-fledged economic crisis. Next year, we will feel it clearly. The government has not been quick enough to address the situation. I have yet to hear its clear assessment of the current situation. So this is essentially it's defeatist propaganda, right? It's an attempt to undermine the morale of the Russian people by saying you're to blame for this. Economics Minister Ulukayev is slightly better. He has some idea of a productive economy, but he's also out there calling this a perfect storm. What kind of stuff is this? This is the party of the foreigner, right? Le parti de l'étranger, with Kudrin. And of course, his buddy Chubais is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and also on the board, one of the advisory boards of J.P. Morgan. So this is the group. And that's what happened when Putin was asked about a coup. And we will give you the answer next time. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So here's the situation. We've got former Prime Minister Kasyanov saying that Putin should resign in 2015. We've got former Finance Minister Kudrin. Kudrin was fired, not even by Putin, but by Medvedev. Kudrin was somebody who said, Our respect of the neoliberal criteria is more important than our defense budget, even though the country is under attack. Remember, the watchword of this crowd is the laws of economic development are objective and universal. But what they call the laws of economic development is the lunacy of the Austrian school, the neoliberal consensus, the rip-off artists, the speculators, the predators, the parasites. That's Kudrin and Kasyanov. Now, it's a challenge to the entire Putin government. The Putin government is based on the idea that Putin does politics and strategy, military, political affairs, but the oligarchs run economics. And up to now, the oligarchs who have gotten slammed, like Khodorkovsky in 2003, back in November, then they were the ones who tried to say, we're going to butt in on your political sphere and have a coup and knock you off, right? If Berlusconi can be the richest man in Italy and therefore prime minister, then Khodorkovsky thought, Khodorkovsky, should be the ruler of Russia because I'm the richest. No, said Putin. No, explained Putin. And Khodorkovsky went to jail for a decade in Siberia. But what we're getting now, inevitably, it's impossible to have a distinction between economics and politics because what you're talking about is political economy, as in the coming course here, starting on the 23rd of January, the political economy of the American Revolution. But you get the idea. The idea that these are separate is an idea of the Austrian school and the various crackpot British and other subjectivist, obscurantist economic schools. So there's no such distinction. And we're probably being pushed towards a situation where Putin will have to revise that the essential compromise underlying his government for the past dozen years or so, which is that since the New Year's Eve of 1999, I guess, that the oligarchs run the economy. Well, the oligarchs can't run the economy. And if you insist on giving the oligarchs the economy, then the entire thing comes down. So that's got to be avoided. And what these people want is they want to find a way to overthrow, to use the economic difficulties now generated, obviously, by Prince Bandar. Bandar is the guy. Bandar is the thinking head of this 2,000 to 3,000 tribe of degenerates calling itself the Saudi royal family. Bandar is the guy who says, pump. He says, pump, baby, pump, and flood the world with oil and smash Putin and smash Iran and smash Venezuela, certainly, in the process. And Russia, I think, is not going to capitulate to that. And I think Iran either. Venezuela is more difficult to defend, but I think they're going to make some efforts, although one of their efforts may well be to default. Now, let's look at that. Suppose Venezuela defaults, right? We were citing last week that we've got estimates, 90% probability of default, 95% maybe now. Well, what about it? So that would bring down somebody in New York or London, I think. Last time around, as we mentioned, it was called Long-Term Capital Management of Connecticut, derivatives mongers. They blew, and Greenspan rushed in, and possibly thanks to the fact that we had former Federal Reserve officials on the board of long-term capital management, they got a quick backdoor bailout, several billion, because that would have blown a considerable hole in the worldwide speculative edifice. But remember, 1998 is the dawn of the derivatives era, and we are now in the sultry, decadent afternoon of the derivatives, right? It's almost sunset for the derivatives. So something's got to happen with that. In Putin's press conference, he was asked by a journalist, are you ready for a coup? What would you do if there's going to be a coup? Now, Putin has said in the past that he knows what a color revolution is and that he's going to fight a color revolution. This character Navalny, right, this thug, is supposed to be the great hero of democracy. Well, he's in the same class with Belhaj or somebody like this. These are no heroes of democracy, right? You've got Limonov, the National Bolshevik, meaning in effect neo-Nazi, and Garry Kasparov, right? This is a completely unprincipled congeries of adventurers and narcissists, egomaniacs, what have you. So Putin is ready for that. And then he was asked, well, is there going to be a coup? And he said, well, I live in the Kremlin and it's well defended. Yeah, of course. The Kremlin is a fortress by definition. So if you're in the Kremlin and you can hold the Kremlin, then that's a whole lot. But you get the idea that in Moscow now, golpe, putsch is being discussed. That is a very, very dangerous thing, right? Suppose we have an attempted coup against Putin, similar to the one we had in the spring of 2003. Remember back then when the Mad Dog Bush, the younger regime, and Cheney, they were getting ready to attack Iraq, but they wanted to guarantee their own oil supply by putting in a suitable puppet in Venezuela, and they tried a coup, and Chavez fought back from the coup, and he defeated them. And after that, he was not so pliable for the entire rest of his time in office. He knew who his enemies were. Imagine they try to overthrow Putin, and it doesn't work, and Putin is left there having had an object lesson. I would say at that point, quite a few oligarchs will have to be taking the, what can we say, the Orient Express, or they'll have to abscond, right? They'll have to adroitly decamp, because otherwise it will not be a good time to be an oligarch in Russia. All right. So, who's the next long-term capital management? And please, don't try a color revolution in Russia. It's doomed. Not even in Belarus could you do it, and in Russia even less. So, who do these people really think they are? Now let's